is a lot of work. Just plain work. When work at home is planned and organized for cooperation, there can usually be more time for leisure.
I'm certainly in favor of those things. Leisure, fun.
Who isn't?
Wouldn't we all be happier if we worked out a little system for living together in harmony?
But how can we manage them?
We'll have to work out the full answer together.
Say, Mom, you're swell.
Most family problems can be solved through frank and friendly discussion, which points the way to a happy family life.
You know, this is beginning to be quite a family project.
It certainly is.
Well, good morning. Well, first thing you will notice on stage is that this dynamic duo does not have like matching Nike tennis shoes on, okay? We don't match our shoes in any way, shape, or form like the rest of the leadership team here. I do maybe have some Chuck Taylors that are probably originals, I will say that. No, we're of the generation now and the decade that I'm into like Skechers slip-ins. That's kind of where I'm at in my life. The only thing matching about our footwear up here would be our orthopedic custom-made arch supports. That would be it. So just getting that out of the way. But my name is Tyler Bragg. This is my wonderful wife, Debbie. I married way out of my league, if you know her. We have 3 beautiful daughters. We have one handsome son who's here today, all of which love Jesus, which I cannot get through that statement, which is awesome. They love others and they're single. So if you do, as a guy, happen to get through my 24-stage screening process with one of my daughters, I would be more than happy to share their Instagram handle with you. 2 are nurses, one's, I could go on. And also how we can have spiritual influence in our work relationships for the kingdom. Maybe from a slightly different perspective as owners and bosses, but there's going to be something hopefully for everyone here today. So today we've come up with a very catchy title for today's talk: How to Do Work. What my master degreed wife didn't share with you is that I, on the other hand, was on academic probation throughout college. And I had to decide between academics, working, and somewhat overactive social life. So you can tell by that title, academia was not my choice. I stuck with work, and I do have several intramural sports championships behind me, and I have the medium T-shirts to prove it. Yes. Yes.
All right, well, let's get started. If you want to open your Bible or your phone or the Sky Bible up here, whatever your choice is, we're going to turn to Genesis 1. But before I get there, let me give you a little background. Genesis actually means the book of beginnings. It can be an interesting place to start, especially if you're new to Bible study, and sometimes it can be challenging for Christians to study too. And as Riley alluded to the last few weeks, the Bible's not a textbook or a science book or even a history book. While it contains those things, it's not what it's written to be. When you're new to Bible study, start with the why instead of the what. Why do we think God said that or is doing that versus what did God do? And also look at who the book was written to, or when was the time frame in which it was written. What were those customs during that time of the day? What that all is called the historical background. And it definitely gives you a good perspective when you're reading a book of the Bible. So for a quick review, Genesis 1, it starts with God creating the universe, right? 5 days, he spoke things into existence. Day 6, he worked with his hands to create man and woman. And then on day 7, he instituted a rhythm of rest, a Sabbath. After the first 5 days, he said, it is good, right? Then on the 6th day, he created man and said, it's not good.
Oh.
Babe?
All right.
Wait a second. Actually, he was talking about man being alone.
There you go.
That was not good.
Please
not that the
clarify.
man wasn't good. Right. Anyway, then he created woman, and they both became image bearers of him. And now it's good. And then he goes on to issue his first command.
Yeah, he did. So let's read that all together in Genesis 1, verse 28. I love this command. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and fill the earth, and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, and over every living thing that moves on the earth. Now, unfortunately, guys, we are not getting to talk about the be fruitful and multiply part of that verse today. What we get to talk about is the word subdue. Subdue. In the Hebrew word, subdue is kabosh. Now, to rule over or to establish rule over. So, babe, the academic probation paid off. I can Google the Hebrew meaning of words and appear smart too, right? Kabosh. Seriously, what did God mean by establish rule? Well, the long and short of it, people, every one of us, have a job to do. God created each one of us on purpose, for a purpose, and part of that purpose is to establish rule over his kingdom here on earth. That's a heavenly job with earthly implications. And God said, thy kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So the question is, how do we do that? What does that look like? Well, first we have to understand the first point here. God created us to be. He created us to simply be. And we are good. We are image bearers of him. If we simply live life as his image bearer, we will start to establish his kingdom here on earth. Secondly, he created us to be, but he also created us to be in relationship with him. Again, you go back to the Garden of Eden, he had a relationship with Adam and Eve, a physical relationship. He walked and talked with them on a daily basis. He established at this point community with himself and each one of us. And lastly, God just didn't create us to be in community with himself, but somewhat unfortunate for us introverts, he created us to be in relationship with others. If we work to be a mirror, an image bearer of Jesus to our families, to our coworkers, to our friends, then we need to be living in community. That's why we are a small groups church, okay? In week 2, Tasha shared how even God's very existence is community via the Trinity. 3 in 1, all working independently but simultaneously in union and community with each other. So, God created us to be. Secondly, God created us to do. Yep. And no one is too young to start doing, are they, babe?
No, they are not. Our firstborn, Gabrielle, I think she was about 3 years old. We woke up on a Saturday morning, came into the kitchen, and she's standing on the kitchen counter putting the dishes away. And might I say, they were the breakable dishes, right? She'd already been putting away the silverware for a while, but in true firstborn fashion, she wanted to prove to us she could do more. See, we all learn this early on, right? Your children understand this. They need to be productive, to be useful, to be helpful, even in their little toddler world. I mean, if you're out working in your yard and you're picking up sticks and your toddler's with you, before they finally start eating the dirt, they actually start mimicking us, right? They start picking up sticks too. They watch us. It's innate. Children pattern their parents. Children pattern their parents. Now, as our kids got older, they started taking out the trash and cleaning their room, doing their own laundry. But guess what? How we expected them to do that? Even now, in their 8 to 5 jobs.
Yeah.
We expected them and taught them to do it with excellence, to the best of their ability at that age. See, there's a couple reasons for that. Most importantly, they are image bearers of Jesus. They mirror his love, his character, his forgiveness. When we mess up or when they mess up, we need that forgiveness. Secondly, we want our kids to be effective for the kingdom. All of our kids, you as well. We all have special gifts and talents that God has given to us that we are to be using to give him glory. And lastly, they carry our last name, Bragg. I mean, we've often told them, don't forget who you're representing. You know, I went to a public school most of my life. In my last 2 years, I went to a Christian school, and I had this volleyball coach. He was intense. He played for Junior Olympics, so you can imagine his intensity. And he constantly was saying to us, what's the front of your uniform say? Lenawee Christian School. You're representing Christ out on the court. You work hard. You do your best. You lay it out there. And then our warm-up jerseys had our last name on it, and mine was Henry at the time, so I was Debbie Henry. And I was also representing my family, and that was important as well.
It's very important. Everyone here, I think, is familiar with the analogy that God uses when he said, we are blessed when our quiver is full of arrows. Children are a blessing from God. Now, remember, historical background. Back in that time, you had to have a lot of children just to survive. I mean, you had one guy out there herding goats, and another kid was herding sheep and maybe cattle, and then you had a whole crew that was doing the vegetable garden, and maybe there was another one on security, from the invading whoever, And so in order to survive, they had to have a quiver full of arrows, okay? But that doesn't change today. Children are a blessing. But you know what we don't want? Is we don't want a quiver full of dull pointed arrows with no feathers. All right? We want our arrows to be effective, to be laser focused on their target, to be dangerous. When someone sees one of our arrows flying by, I want them to naturally assume they are going to hit the target. Okay? I want them to have already heard about my quality arrows. And know if they ever get a chance to shoot one, okay, to lead one, to instruct one, to be the boss of one, that they know that our arrows, our children, are going to fly true and straight and not waver and drift left or right of center. But if aimed correctly, and there's a responsibility in aiming an arrow correctly, more often than not, my children are going to hit the bullseye with excellence. Does that make sense? Okay.
There's a pretty famous passage about work in the New Testament that Paul writes in the book of Colossians, chapter 3. Now, he starts at verse 22, but we're going to back up a few verses because we found something kind of fascinating when we were studying it. So starting in verse 18, it says, "Wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord. Husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Children, obey your parents in everything, for this pleases the Lord. Fathers, don't provoke your children, lest they become discouraged."
Yeah, one of the things that we noticed that in those verses, it was just quick and to the point. It was one line each. It was wives submit, husbands love, children obey, fathers don't anger, okay? And then Paul talks to us as employees, and guess what? He writes a novel, okay? And you're just kind of sitting there, okay, well, what's the deal, man? Why is Paul placing such an importance on being an employee, okay? So let's go ahead and read this passage together, and we'll just talk about it a little bit. So in verse 22, it starts, it says, "Bondservants or employees, obey in everything those who are your earthly masters, not by way of eye service as people pleasers, but with sincerity of heart, fearing the Lord. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men, knowing that from the Lord you will receive the inheritance as your reward. You are serving the Lord Christ." So let's start. he writes, bondservants or employees, obey only what is easy, only what doesn't cause you stress, only what is your responsibility and not your lazy, good-for-nothing coworker's job that now you have to do because they were on Instagram or playing Wordle or Candy Crush all day and now you have to do their job and yours. No. All right? Obey in everything those who are your earthly masters. Not for way of eye service, or in other words, not just because you want to look good in front of your coworkers or your boss, or you have that innate, desire to people please, but with what? Sincerity of heart, out of respect and fear of the Lord. And then he continues, once again, whatever you do in all your work, not just the easy stuff, not just the enjoyable stuff, not just stuff that you can really quick mark off your list so you feel like you got something done today and then you put the rest of the stuff on the back burner. No. How are we to work? Heartily. Okay? So the Greek word here is cardia, for heart, okay? But that's not the word, how it's used in this instance. The word is psyche, most translated soul. And Riley's talked about this before. Your soul consists of your mind, your will, your emotions, every part of you. So when you're working heartily, if we're just working for cardia, our heart would be different, but we're not. We're working for our psyche with our soul. So it encompasses a lot more. Every ounce of us needs to be in that effort as we work. And then he talks about who are we working for? Well, as for the Lord, not unto men. Now, do we work for ourselves to provide? I guess, yes.
What employees of the kingdom do. Mm-hmm. And we help without pay. Our youth group went over once and cut down this massive tree that had fallen in one of their yards. And I'm telling you, it was a ton of work. Yep. But they know on those days they are earning heavenly riches, crowns in heaven. They aren't getting money that they can go on a late night run to Cookout, or maybe they're going to 7 Brew to get some caffeine, or Cane's Tendies, or whatever. In those situations, that work is to encourage someone. It's an act of service. And ultimately, it's an act of our worship to the Lord. And in fact, this week, it's Serve Week here at Manna. Lots of opportunities.
Bring your kids.
Bring your kids, yes.
Make them work. Serve. Work. All right? Yeah. So secondly, now you know you're an employee of the kingdom. You're not here just for you. Your perspective on work might need to change. Do you now need to reevaluate how you act? What you say in the break room at work, over lunch with coworkers. Was that verse, let no unwholesome thing proceed out of your mouth? Might there be some gossip, some jokes, may not be said, negativity about the boss, complaints about schedules or tasks that may need eliminated? Might you need to start performing with excellence like we talked about instead of mediocrity? Remember, you're mirroring Jesus. You got his last name, you know. Do you look at your job as a blessing from God? That's something. It's an opportunity. It's a blessing to mirror Jesus at your work. Remember how I just said serving the Lord Christ? Well, what needs to change with the realization that your work is serving the Lord Christ, not your boss?
You are at your job for yourself, and you're at your job for others as well. How do you as a kingdom employee arrive to work or to school? Is it last minute, you're unprepared, you're late, you got a bad attitude, maybe you're grumpy because you didn't get enough sleep? What about when you leave your job for another opportunity? Do you leave on good terms? Give proper notice? Do you stop to think about how your actions might affect your boss or your fellow coworkers? Or maybe you're the employee who just says, I'm done, I'm out, I'm quitting. This is too much adversity for me. Are you showing up being an image bearer of Jesus and how we should act? even finishing with excellence. I mean, Jesus finished pretty awesome.
Yes, he did.
What type of work do you do as a kingdom employee? How do you produce that work? Is it done with excellence, or you're just doing it to get by? If you're there, not only for yourself, but for others, are you doing everything you can that will make their life better, easier? Or are you being a servant leader to your coworkers? Or are you just trying to make their job harder because they absolutely make your life miserable? What is the reputation of kingdom employees that you are setting as an example to your coworkers? Does your work ethic and attitude eliminate your opportunity to invite them to manna? To invite them to the greatest gift that we could offer to them, a relationship with Jesus?
Wow. Lastly, as we finish up here, the Lord placed you on your job. So trust him, all right? Did you ever think about that? That God placed you, or had you maybe answer that Indeed ad, or whatever, that he put you on a specific job, on a specific floor, in your department, at your desk, for a reason that is probably bigger than you and bigger than your job. When you think about that, though, now, does that excite you? Or maybe like me, scares you a little bit that now I got this responsibility? That God put me here for a reason that's bigger than me. And just be vulnerable about this. As a boss and an owner of a company, that keeps me awake at night. God hasn't just given this job to me as an assignment, but it's my calling. I am called into the ministry of being the Jesus some of my employees will ever see, the only Jesus. I'm called to do my best to provide for them, to ensure I'm doing everything possible for our companies to succeed, to provide an environment where they can be all that God intended them to be. We have that on our website. It's part of our mission. And we walk through that with them and say, hey, if you can't be all that you want to be here at this job, let's find where you can, okay? It may not be with us. Maybe, there's a necessary ending to everything. And so we'll walk them through that and say, we want you to experience God's best for your life, even if that means we're now in a little bit of a fix trying to replace you. We view ourselves that we are in full-time Christian ministry, even in the secular world. Reality is I just don't get the same tax breaks that Riley gets. So, only difference, no. Seriously, we're called to be image bearers of Jesus. And honestly, sometimes things happen and people happen. They may act in ways that make that extremely difficult. I want to lose my testimony a lot. I really do. I probably have, and I have to apologize, But when those things happen, what do? When life gets difficult, when it gets stressful, when, things aren't going the way you want it to as a job, and you've got all these people to provide for, and you're wondering, where is that next job coming from? We were there this week. Yeah. We were like, God, I have to have a job come in. Man, he's so good.
Yes.
This is off script, sorry. You tell. We have a division out in Indiana, man. It was running short. I'm like, God, we have to have something this week. And I just said that to my office ladies. I'm like, we got to pray. God's got to bring in a job Thursday or Friday, type of deal. And I talked to my manager on Friday. He's like, hey, man, I just had, lunch with this company, and we're working on this job, and guess what, man? It's going to go an extra week, man. We're all good. I'm just like, oh, he's so good. He's so good. So where do I turn when those things happen? What's my first reaction? Well, my first reaction needs to be that I trust him. Not myself, or my management team or my employees or my salesmen or my standard operating procedures. No, I got to trust him.
That's so true. And then God gives this perfect verse in Proverbs for us. It's Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. And it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him and he will make straight your paths. You know, trust in him and not leaning on what we've got and your abilities, your intellect, your resources. I mean, yes, we can lean on those, what you got, right? But we choose not to. Instead, we make a conscious decision to relinquish control to him.
You mean God doesn't want me to be in control?
No, it does not work well.
He doesn't want me to make every decision about my life?
No.
You mean God may actually want me to live in the unknown? Trust me, control comes very naturally for someone like me. If you've been around me, you know that. It's much more natural and comforting than the alternative. I mean, I love to plan, be strategic. It's one of my gifts. I lay awake at night and I think through the next day and I come up with A plan and then I come up with B plan. And then if B ain't going to work, I got C, D, and E plans in my pocket. I mean, I am ready to go for the next day. Nothing's going to take me by surprise. I got it planned out. I like to live in the known. I like to be in control. But you know where that leaves me? In control. And that's a very dangerous place for every one of us to live. Because I'm on academic probation, I'm not that smart, I don't learn the first time, and God says he disciplines those he loves. Well, he disciplines me with a 2x4, okay? Undisciplined, impulsive, addictive personality. I make poor choices. I, just like you, okay, have a sin nature and an old self that quite often decides to make an appearance in the most inopportune times. Doesn't it? Doesn't it? So where do I go at those times? Where do I need to be? Where can I experience God's best for my life? Well, I need to be living in the unknown, out of my control, and trusting and resting in God's control, okay? That's where and when I allow him to show up, right? That's where I learn to trust him. That's where I learn to walk by faith when I am out of control. Man, I'm on my knees. It's like, God, you've got to show up, right? When I relinquish control, I give him then the opportunity to redeem what I've screwed up. I give him the opportunity to restore me to wholeness and back into community. I give him the opportunity to reconcile my relationships back into oneness and unity. When I relinquish control, I give him the opportunity for me to experience righteousness, forgiveness, refreshment, his best for my life. All right? Just wrapping it up, man. All of this comes from trust. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge him. And what? He will direct your paths. No, he will make your paths straight. Okay? He created you on purpose for a purpose. Okay? This experience right now, being part of a local church, the bride of Christ. I mean, isn't that amazing? It's all part of that design, your purpose. I mean, you're individual, you're special, you're created for relationship, in a family, with your Creator, and in a community. But what's great is now, the pressure of work and to perform and to do good works, guess what? It isn't on you. It rests on Jesus. Trust him. He's going to make your path straight. Right? I mean, it's much easier to walk down a straight path following him than try to go down some crooked one when you're in control. Isn't it? All right? Even a guy like me on academic probation sometimes can get this stuff, you know? All right. Let's just pray. All right. God, man, thank you so much. But man, we're your bride. And that you direct our paths. And Lord, that you've given us a blueprint in your word to even show us how to walk those paths at work. I mean, you've given us, just all of it. You know, every aspect of your life can be found how to live it through your word. So Lord, just thank you for that. So Lord, we just pray that this morning, God, that these words that were spoken could have just had some effect on the people here, a paradigm shift, that they'll walk out of here and say, hey, now that a new creation, thank you for fulfilling your promise to me. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, let's give a round of applause to the people who made that. So I will say, guys, if you raise your hand, come up, man. Talk to me. Talk to Riley, Pastor Dan, someone else with the red shirt, man. We want to get you set up on the right path, all right? It's just so good. I don't know what else to say. So, hey, that's it for today. Also, we'll have the prayer team up here. So if some of you need prayer for something, feel free to come up. They'd love to intercede over you. Thanks again for coming. We appreciate you all. Have a great week. You're dismissed.